All right, everyone. I want to talk to you guys about the economic situation due to the coronavirus pandemic and what sort of geopolitical consequences we should look forward to, or at least be concerned about for the future. Now, when the COVID pandemic first began, I did a video about how the pandemic, and this was quite obvious, was going to be damaging to America's economy, but also the EU's economies as well. And I talked about how the diminishment of economies would lead to political radicalism. Because as the divide between the haves and the have-nots widens, more and more people will look to fringe ideologies, or at least ideologies that are normally seen as fringe, such as left-wing socialism, right-wing socialism, things like fascism, etc. As more and more people become disgruntled with the system, they will begin to look to political outsiders for their their economic salvation, or to fulfill some idea of political identity or national or ethnic identity. Things like populism become more popular. So one of the biggest indications of how the pandemic has affected the economy, at least America's economy, is the price of lumber. Anyone who has gone to Lowe's or Home Depot or any other home improvement store looking to buy wood to build some garden beds or a backyard fence knows that the price of lumber has risen tremendously. The price of lumber is, generally speaking, 3 times what it was before the pandemic commenced, before the pandemic manifested itself, pre-COVID times, to put it simple. And also, there is a housing crisis, not in the sense that tons of houses are for sale and you have a huge bubble that just popped, but rather you have not enough houses for sale. People are struggling to find a house to buy. And the reason why is because there are less and less homes being built. The reason behind that is the price of lumber is too high, so people are not building as many homes as they normally would. There was a study that was done by the National Association of Realtors on what is the minimum number of homes that America needs right now. And they concluded that at least 5.5 million homes would have to be built just to help keep up with the demand for homes. And because there is a lack of homes for sale, first-time home buyers aren't able to find homes. And so they have to remain as renters. Another problem is that, and this pertains to the subject of renting, another problem is that millions of people are being very close to getting evicted. There are a lot of people who know or who are quite certain that they're going to be getting evicted within the next couple of months. So millions of people face evictions, or at least they are under the threat of being evicted. And this could lead to a crisis of homelessness. It's also going to widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots. Another thing that is going to contribute to this divide is the rise in automation. Remember what happened during the COVID lockdowns. People weren't working, and so companies needed to invest more in technology to do the work as opposed to human labor. And so automation boomed. There was a huge explosion of automation, and things like this were predicted years ago. And the reliance on artificial intelligence, the reliance on automation is going to lead to a lot of people who don't have college degrees to be out of work. So this is going to widen that divide between the haves and the have-nots, between the rich and the poor, and between those who have degrees in tech and those who don't. And people who are going to have difficulty looking for work, they're going to be disgruntled with the system. They're going to be angry. And so populism is going to become more popular. And the danger with that is fringe ideologies like fascism or Marxism are going to be seen as more tolerable, something more acceptable. And that Overton window is going to widen to a dangerous degree. We're seeing this a lot in Latin America. We have been seeing this in the United States with the rise of politicians like AOC and Tlaib and Omar. All of these are signs that ideologies that were once considered fringe are becoming more and more acceptable, especially amongst the young, amongst the youth, amongst people who are millennial, but more so amongst people who are a part of that Zoomer generation. And the generation that is after the Zoomers, they call them Generation Alpha, they are going to be worse than the Zoomers. There have been studies on what to expect from the Zoomers and from Generation Alpha. And one of the things that we should expect is the rise in nationalism, the rise in populism. And this trend is not going to subside. It's only going to intensify. We've been seeing this in Israel for a long time. In Israel, the younger generation is extremely nationalistic. And the younger people are voting for more right-wing politics. They're more in favor of right-wing politics. And who in Israel is having a lot of the kids? It's the nationalists. It's the people who are very, very religious. They're having much higher birth rates than secular Israelis, than Israelis that are more liberal. So you're going to see in Israel more and more young people who are right-wing. And the right-wing in Israel, the nationalists in Israel, they are winning, not just in politics, but they are also winning in the demographics war. They're having more children. And with more and more children, that means you have more and more people subscribing to your ideology. It's really that simple. Now, in Latin America, nationalism is also increasing, but it's not exactly right-wing nationalism. It's nationalism that has the face of Che Guevara. It's left-wing nationalism. Still nationalism. It's still dangerous, but it has more of a Che Guevara, somos el gente type of vibe. It's the Che Guevara nationalism. Still nationalism, but it's left-wing. It's communistic. It's socialistic. It's Marxist. And this is not an enigma. This is not a rarity nor an anomaly. It's something that is very much so typical. It's much so expected in nationalism within Latin America. So you're seeing that trend manifesting itself very strongly in Latin America. We've seen it recently in Peru, but we've also seen it in Bolivia, where there was a right-wing nationalist coup against the left-wing nationalists. In Mexico, you have the rise of Obrador and he is a nationalist. He is basically a Mexican Trump with a left-wing face, and he is still very, very popular. Now, in Europe, you're also seeing this trend amongst the young people, especially in Eastern Germany. The East German region of Saxony-Anhalt just had an election. Now, the Christian Democrats took first place, but who got first place amongst the youth? Because the Christian Democrats, they got first place overall, but who got first place amongst the young people? It was the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland party, the nationalists, the far-right party, the anti-immigration party, where you've had people who have literally sympathized with Adolf Hitler within this party. They say that if you just got the young people in Saxony-Anhalt to vote, AfD would have been number one. So it's not the older folks in Germany who are voting for the nationalists and the right wing. It's the young people. Now, of course, there are older people in Germany who are right wing and nationalists, but in the case of at least Saxony-Anhalt, we can see that there is definitely a trend amongst the youth that is more favorable towards nationalist right-wing politics. And this is an indication that young people in Europe can be just as right-wing, just as conservative, just as, well, not necessarily conservative, but just as right-wing and nationalist as some of the older folks can be. But we're seeing this rise in popularity amongst the young. So we're seeing this global trend. It's more so towards automation. You're seeing a housing crisis in which there are not a lot of houses being built, not enough houses being built. More and more people are going to be stuck in the perpetual cycle of renting. Millions of people face eviction. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. At the same time, there are a lot of people who have started businesses. There's been a huge boom since last year of people applying to build their own businesses. But if we have a recession, a lot of this is just going to topple. And with economic diminishment, with economic disaster, you will also have a rise in political radicalism. And also with the rise of automation, you have less and less people working, or you'll have more and more people having difficulty looking for work. And that is going to lead to more and more disgruntled people looking up to political radicals for their hope. It's going to be an international trend. And I think that Europe is going to have a much tougher time because just like in 2008, America had a lot easier. It was a lot easier for the United States to rebuild itself from the Great Recession than Europe. And with the 2010 economic crisis in Europe, you had the spark in nationalism that we have been seeing growing to this day. So that is my position for the future. And I will talk more about this as more and more situations take place that indicate this growing trend. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.